Simon, yeah. Team 7, Christoph, Leonardo, and Eric. Hey, so everyone's here. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so today there are 3 or 4 main things. This session, of course, that's where you all are right now. After this session, we're going downstairs to the lounge. That's the area, the breakfast area with all the wooden tables. And that's where we'll have a hackathon. So please go with your team, find a table, sit down, and that's where you can finish your FHIR app and your pitch. There'll be FHIR experts there to ask questions to. So any questions you have, you can ask them to the people that are there. There are 2, so Graham and Josh. Graham is the founding father of FHIR. You can call him the inventor of FHIR. And we asked him to also visit the lounge somewhere between 10 and noon. So if you see him, talk to him. He's a great guy. He can tell you everything about FHIR. And then there's also Josh. Josh is a chief architect at Microsoft and also the guy behind Smart on FHIR. SMART stands for Substitutable Medical Applications and Reusable Technologies. And it's an app platform that allows developers to seamlessly integrate apps into an electronic health record. So also definitely talk to Josh if you see him. Make sure that your app is ready to be demoed at the end of the hackathon. So that's important. You can use screenshots or maybe a live demo, but make sure you have something ready at the end of the hackathon. The demo sessions are during lunch. So after the hackathon, the lunch is at 12, quarter to past 12, also in the lounge. Stay at the table where you are. We'll set up signs so that other people also can see which woo's woo and what the title is of your application. Anyone else can also join. So the jury is there, but also other people that are interested, they can just ask you to show what you built, and that's during the lunch. Don't forget to have lunch as well. So grab something to eat, sit down, and then hopefully that all works out well. Pitches. So this is important. We have 5 minutes per team. Pitches are here at 2:30. Please send me your slides, today, but before 2:15, so I can put all your slides on one slide deck, so we can quickly switch between the teams. The order of the presentations is the order of the team. So team 1 goes first, and team 2, etc., until team 7. There's not much time for questions during the pitch session, but maybe we'll have some time afterwards to do some quick questions, and otherwise we can, of course, if the jury or you have questions to others, we can do that after the session. Use the template. So you should all have the DevDays template. Use that template, and we listed 4 main topics that we would like to see in the presentation. The jury. This is James. Ronald, over there, also happens to be my supervisor. So be nice to him. Be nice to everyone, but be also nice to him. And Lillian, she's not here, but she will join at the demo session, so then you also see her. They will kind of look at what you built. You can also ask them questions. They can give you feedback. And then they will also decide eventually who won the competition. If you win the competition, so these are the things that it will look at, you get the chance to present your pitch, so the same pitch you presented here, at the main stage after the keynote this afternoon. So that will be around 5:15. There's a cup you can win as well. There's FHIR swag for everyone, and also eternal glory for everyone. So you already won that. Yeah. There's time this afternoon, so at 1:30 and 3:15, there's time for you to visit sessions here at DevDays, so whichever session you'd like to join. These are some suggestions. Of course, I can understand maybe you want to prepare your pitch on the first session, but maybe if you're already ready, you can just go and go to another session if you'd like to. That's about it, I think. Don't forget the social event tonight. So there's buses leaving at 6:15, so you don't have to go there yourself. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to James. Are there any questions? Oh, one more thing, actually, 2 more things. Have fun, that's important. But also, if you have any questions or something doesn't go well, and you can't find me or anyone of the jury, Wova is the best way to reach me. If you have the app on your phone, just send me a message on Wova. That's my email address. You can also email me. Email me your slides, but if you're emailing me, I don't have my email on my phone, so I probably won't see it right away. And if you want to leave feedback at the end of the day about the student track, please go to devdays.com/feedback and let us know what you thought of the student track. That's it. Any questions right now? That's easy. All right, there we go. I think I have to stop sharing and then you can share, right?
No, I think you're good, maybe. We probably. Oh, I have to start sharing. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Desktop share. All right, there we go. I think this is working. Yes. Let's get that out of the way. All right, so welcome everyone to the student track. This is the best part of DevDays. It always is. I love seeing what people come up with. I know the other members of our jury also love that. It's going to be super fun. Philip asked me to say a couple of words, and he didn't really give me a whole lot of guidelines about what to talk about. So I thought I would tell a little story, just as a way of kicking this all off. So I want to tell a very personal story about my own career post being a student in developing healthcare apps. I'm hoping all of you guys are going to go on to develop awesome healthcare apps. I mean, you're obviously here because you find that stuff interesting. The world needs more programmers, needs more app builders. This is an awesome time to be doing exactly that, so I thought I would tell a little story about that. There we go, we're moving. So, thinking about building healthcare apps first, I mean, this is a healthcare data conference you're at, and we're here talking about FHIR, which is a healthcare data standard. And this is important because this is so central to everything that is healthcare. The way that we all experience healthcare, I mean, you sort of see that, as you talk to doctors, you get this real sense of exactly how healthcare works. And it fundamentally, I mean, I'm sure I'm oversimplifying in a way that would be horrifying to any actual doctors, but really everything that doctors do is all about this sort of loop of gathering data, making decisions about treatment, and then monitoring that treatment to figure out, is it working? And then if not, gathering more data and sort of continuing that loop. And hopefully eventually you get better and that loop stops. But I mean, the most important thing in all of that is gathering data. And traditionally, gathering data has been really hard. This is the thing we're all here to fix. This is the thing that FHIR is aiming to fix. And FHIR, of course, is just a tool. All we can do is take advantage of that tool and use it to gather data better, empower our clinicians to make better data, and hopefully empower patients to receive better healthcare, to be a part of that whole loop. So my story, I want to take you back. This is a photo of my city, Toronto, where I come from. And my story is from the fall of 2003. So in 2003, I hate thinking about how old this makes me, but I had graduated not long before that. I graduated maybe 2 years before that and did some government work that I didn't enjoy, but fell into a job completely unintentionally within the healthcare system. I don't know what everyone here is studying, but I studied computer science. I had nothing to do with healthcare, had no idea I was interested in healthcare, and almost accidentally fell into healthcare. Back in 2003, medical informatics programs were much less common than they are today, so there wasn't this sense that that was a thing you could specialize in. So I knew I liked computers, I took computer science, I went through that, and sort of accidentally fell into this healthcare job. And what you're looking at in this picture, the place that my first job in healthcare was at this place. This is Toronto General Hospital, big hospital, teaching hospital, downtown Toronto. And it's located, this street is called University Avenue. We call this Hospital Row. And the reason we call it that is because it's surrounded by hospitals. This is Toronto General. Behind it is a hospital called the Hospital for Sick Children. This is Princess Margaret Cancer Center, one of the leading cancer centers in the world. Next to it is Mount Sinai Hospital. These are all separate facilities, entirely separate buildings. They've got separate medical records. They're fairly advanced facilities, all of them. They were early adopters of electronic health records, all of them, and they all had them by 2003. But they were all completely separate systems. Like, these are separate organizations that had nothing to do with each other. And one of my very first asks in this job, my boss said to me, we need to build a system that will allow these hospitals to communicate with each other. And he explained to me, I didn't know much about the healthcare system in those days. He explained to me that a common thing was that patients would move between the facilities. You know, people often have more than one thing wrong with them. And if they're in for example, a transplant, but they needed a service that was provided by one of the other buildings, they would actually wheel them across the street. I mean, they've got tunnels actually that bring them under the streets, but they would wheel them to the other facility, they would receive some treatment, and they would go back. But of course, it's easy to bring people around. In those days, as was explained to me, it was really hard to make data follow these people around. All they could do, I don't know if anyone was in any of the earlier talks, but all they could do was send faxes across the road, basically. They could send faxes across. And of course, that's a mess. I mean, data does not flow well by fax. They misdirect it. They have no way of getting missing information, anything like that. Like, it was just a terrible situation. So, they said, could we build a website where doctors could look at data from the other hospital? And I remember saying to my boss at the time, like, don't we already have that? Like, why wouldn't that be a thing? And I mean, he laughed. That was his response. He said, of course not. There is no ability for data to flow between these buildings. They're separate buildings. They have nothing to do with each other. So I thought, this is crazy, but okay, let's try to solve that problem. This is a screenshot of the system that we ultimately built. We built this system about 20 years ago. I wish I'd kept more screenshots. I've got 2 screenshots of my time 20 years ago. And I mean, looking at this to me now is hilarious. Like, I realize it's ugly. It's really terrible design. I mean, you have to appreciate that people built websites very differently 20 years ago than they do now. But this was a thing we built. And I don't want to go into all the technical details of it, but I thought it was kind of neat. I mean, these are the logos of all the hospitals that we connected in, and you could pick a patient, you could pick a time range you were interested in. It would go out, it would fetch a list of available tests and notes and things like that from each of the hospitals and show them on a little table. You could click on a row, it would fetch the rest of the data and bring it up. I mean, it's all, it's not rocket science. It's all pretty self-explanatory. We had little sort buttons and stuff like that. This thing ultimately ended up being utterly revolutionary to the people that it impacted. It solved that initial use case of providing treatment between the facilities, but I mean, the really neat thing was this system took a life of its own on. Ultimately, it started actually only connecting 2 hospitals, these 2, but a bunch of other facilities around the city, and eventually a bunch of other facilities within our province where I'm from, which is a pretty giant area, all got on board with this. And we ended up getting these stories of people that formerly, had cancer treatment and would have to come in once a week to have tests done and then talk to their doctor and then get sent back. And these were people, I mean, this is in Canada, we have large geography. These were people traveling hundreds of kilometers to come to a specialist center, have a lab test, talk to their doctor to find out that the test was okay, and then go back home. And I mean, we started discovering that, doctors on their own had taken this system and discovered that they could actually have these patients have tests in their own city and then have a quick phone call from the doctor to say, nope, was fine. I looked online on the Pro system. Everything was okay. So the whole thing took a life of its own. We thought it was really neat. And this was unintentional. Little really easy piece of technology that sort of enabled this. So how did this thing work? I mean, it's really simple, actually. We built a little data aggregation server, and I'm going to talk about the actual protocols in a second, but I mean, the architecture is simple. We built a little data aggregation server that would pull data in from each of the hospitals. We built a little web portal server that presented that ugly, ugly UI, and then this is 2003, so that was what computers looked like back then. People would log onto their browsers and would bring up our little website, and that was how that all worked. So, I mean, my point today, and this is what I want to talk about for the rest of this, is that ugly system that solved all those neat problems was really, really, really hard to build. And it was really hard to build because we had to fight everything along the way. And that, I mean, the reason I got involved in FHIR personally, the reason I think the standard is neat, is entirely because of that experience of building that application. FHIR has been solving every one of the problems that were barriers to us. It took us 5 years to build the system I just showed you, 5 years. And honestly, I think any one of you guys could probably build that same system today in a matter of months. Because all of the problems, like all the things that made that hard, none of them are solved, but they're all so much easier today. It's really cool. So let's talk about a few of the challenges we had along the way. First, getting access to data was awful in those days, just awful. We didn't have FHIR. We had a protocol called HL7 version 2. I suspect at least some of you guys have seen this protocol before. If you haven't, this is HL7 version 2. It's kind of a neat protocol. But it's not based on really anything else. Like, it's not modern JSON, it's not even modern XML or anything like that. It's its own weird standard with its own very proprietary way of flowing. It's really not designed for queries like we were doing. But I mean, it is what it is. This was the way that you access data. It was really, really challenging. So why was it challenging? Come on, there we go. First off, the protocol wasn't even designed for real-time applications. There was no sense, like nobody who developed that protocol was thinking about websites querying into EMRs to pull data out. They were thinking about old-fashioned sort of messaging things, and they had entirely different workflows in mind. It didn't envision modern applications, really. And worse than that, there was absolutely no technology off the shelf that we could use to speak this protocol. There were really, really expensive libraries, and I'm talking millions of dollars worth of libraries that we could buy, but there was nothing off the shelf we could use, within our budget. So the first probably year or two of us building this system was us building an open source library to talk that protocol. And eventually we got that done, and we started building the actual application. So that was among the challenges that we had. So FHIR came along, and FHIR, even in its very first iteration, and that's a decade ago, FHIR was just obviously so much better than anything that had come before it. It was this nice modern, it used JSON instead of this awful proprietary thing. It spoke REST. We could perform queries, and most importantly, there are free tools in every single language you would ever care about. I'm a part of the Happy project that implements this in Java. Our friends at FHIR create a lovely free .NET SDK. There are libraries in Swift. There are libraries in Ruby. There are libraries, there's a million libraries in JavaScript. I'm sure you guys in your own applications have used a bunch of those libraries. FHIR is so much easier to get started with than the things that came before it. So that's pretty cool. Problem two, and this is neat. Just launching this application was an absolutely awful challenge. This is a screenshot of an EMR, and hopefully none of you guys have had to spend enough time with doctors that you've spent much time seeing their EMRs, but I'll tell you, once you're in this industry, you become obsessed with EMRs. Every doctor visit the rest of your life you'll ever have. You're going to be studying the EMR that you're using and asking them annoying questions about how it works. One of the things what's pretty central to EMRs is they've generally got this concept of like a patient desktop where you go in, you pick the patient that you're talking to, and there's buttons there for like ordering drugs or looking at lab tests or whatever. We wanted to put a button on that patient desktop that would launch our Pro system. And it was explained to us that this button has to be easy. It has to bring up the right patient. There can't be extra steps where they have to go in and start from scratch and repick their patient. There can't be extra steps where they have to remember another username and another password. They just have to click a button and end up in the pro system. And if it takes them more than 5 seconds to get there, they're not going to use it and you will have failed. So we thought, okay, let's do that. But that was really hard. There was no concept at that point of single sign-on between systems. Like EMRs in 2003 did not do single sign-on. So, I mean, we actually had to solve that by hacking their database and figuring out, like, where were they storing passwords, and that part was awful. There was no concept back then either of what we call context sharing. This idea of having one application with a patient already picked and having another application show up with the same patient picked. That really simple thing, and we call this context passing, didn't exist back then. I mean, it's not entirely that it didn't exist, but there was no easy way of doing it. So yet again, I mean, we had to design a protocol for that. And the protocol we built, I don't even want to explain all of it because it was horribly insecure. It's embarrassing the way that we solved that problem. But we did solve it. I mean, we ultimately did get it to work in a way that I'm not proud of. But it took a ton of work to get there. So ultimately, oh yeah, here we go. So I mean, everything I just said, that's it. There was just nothing. We did get there though in the end. The thing that makes all of this easy is another protocol that sort of comes out of the FHIR community. This is a thing called Smart on FHIR. Smart on FHIR took a bunch of existing web standards and solved all of the problems that we had come up with these awful clunky solutions to. What's really neat about Smart on FHIR is they didn't try to design something from scratch. They looked to the rest of the industry. They looked to, like, how are these problems being solved out in the broader world, and ultimately they sort of took advantage of those technologies to solve these problems for healthcare. How does it work fundamentally inside? If you're not familiar with Smart on FHIR, if you've ever clicked on a button anywhere on the internet that says, log in with Google or log in with Facebook or log in with Twitter or whatever, ultimately the way those log in with buttons work, they're using a protocol called OAuth 2. This is a really standard thing these days. It's a workflow that we're all comfortable with. I'm sure everyone in this room has clicked one of those buttons before. This is how Smart on FHIR works. So this is taking existing technology that consumers of the world are familiar with and applying it to healthcare in a workflow that we're all comfortable with. So they've reused that to solve the problem of single sign-on into healthcare apps, and they layered on a little bit of extra technology into there to solve the context passing problem. And ultimately with Smart, if somebody was building that system that we built 20 years ago today, they would be able to do that exact same flow with context, with users signed in, with all that good stuff. And it would probably take them an hour to solve the thing that we spent probably a year trying to solve back in 2005 when we solved that particular problem. So things are so much better now. It's awesome. Finally, and most importantly, there was no help available to us anywhere. We learned, after we put this system out, we went out, we started presenting it at conferences and things like that, trying to talk about our work. And all these people started coming out of the woodwork saying, we also built a system like that. And we compared notes and we'd all come up with these awful solutions to the same problems. We'd all approach them from different ways. But fundamentally, if we'd known that each other existed, and this was people in Canada, this was people in Europe, this was people in the US, there was people everywhere that were trying to solve the same stupid problems. And we had no idea that each other existed, which was, I don't know, it was unfortunate to me. This too is so different in FHIR. And this is probably the most important thing that I want to say to you guys. You're sort of, as you're going forward with careers, building healthcare applications and all of that, know that, this isn't limited to the FHIR community, but the world these days has this massive community of people building applications and helping each other solving problems. I hope today, hopefully all of you guys will spend some time at the rest of the conference. Hopefully you'll get out to the social event tonight. The thing that you will hopefully find, and I know you will, is that the FHIR community at large is an amazing, collaborative, awesome community, and everyone wants to help everyone else with whatever problems they're trying to solve. Everyone is all about exchanging information, exchanging ideas, all that good stuff. It's a really neat thing. The focal point of that community, if you haven't found it before for FHIR, is a system we call Zulip. It's at chat.phir.org. It's effectively a real-time chat platform. I will encourage anyone who ever has a question about FHIR or anything like that. It's totally free. Go ahead and sign up. It's a bit of a confusing UI, but you get used to it eventually. If you ask a question on there, if we had more time, I would show you. If you ask a question on there, it doesn't matter how crazy it is, how low level, how high level, you will get an answer. You'll probably get 20 people arguing about who's got the best answer. People love to help each other on this system. So it's pretty neat. And of course, events like today, I mean, I hope the rest of the DevDays experience will highlight to you the value that is the FHIR community. It's a neat thing. So there we go. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts on pitches. I've done a lot of pitches in my life. They're fun and they're awful at the same time. I'm sure you'll find the same thing. Make sure, if you're going to do live demos, make sure you got a screenshot or two available. Every time, anyway, I don't know. My experience in life is if you've got a plan B, your demo is going to go smoothly. If you don't have a plan B, your system's going to crash, guaranteed. So make sure you got that. Figure out who's going to talk and when. That's important. Philip and I didn't do that today, but we worked it out at the end, so that was cool. Tell the judges about your experience through the hackathon. They love that. And most importantly, have a great time. You're at an awesome event. I hope it's fun. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, James and Philip. Are there any questions? I know we already kind of did that earlier, but just in case, and pass around the mic so that way we can get it on record. Questions?
Uh-oh.
We would really love to take your group picture in this room to show the energy, the excitement you'll get started for your hackathon. So if it's okay with you?
Yeah, should we just all go over here or? No, just. Oh, we all sit down. Okay.
All right. Should we sit?
Yeah. Where do you sit? Over here?
I guess. Let's turn.
Okay, let's stand in front of the screen. Thanks, guys.